It's the weekend. Spend it with people you love away from politics. See you Monday night from Chicago.
I call an opportunity economy. An opportunity economy. An economy where everyone can compete and have a real chance to succeed.
All right, I'm Chris Cuomo. Sorry for that edit. Thank you for joining me here on NewsNation. Kamala Harris had her first real at-bat today. Did she deliver better than Trump did when it comes to economy understanding and economy planning? She gave her plans in North Carolina. Interesting, wearing Tar Heel blue. Why? Because that state is presumed to go to Trump. Now, I'll say this. Harris spent almost no time relatively acting and attacking the way Trump did with her during his economic presentation. And that should matter. I know most are going to wave it away and say, well, Trump is Trump. I don't believe in different sets of rules for candidates. I think that's BS. We need better from all these politicians, and it is good that she stressed why she is a better choice and not just that he is a bad choice. That said, I'll also say this. This is a really aggressive, progressive policy move. These are expensive ideas that will not be easy to pay for or for them to pay off. And one main idea plays right into deep suspicions about the far left. So what was the substance? First up, Harris acknowledged prices for essentials too high and then made a choice on what to blame. She could have said, look, we got to own our monetary policy. I'm thinking of doing this different than Biden, this. Instead, she blamed money-grubbing corporations.
We all know that prices went up during the pandemic when the supply chains shut down and failed. But our supply chains have now improved, and prices are still too high. So believe me, as president, I will go after the bad actors, and I will work to pass the first ever federal ban on price gauging on food.
All right, so price gauging versus gouging, she made a mistake. We noted it. Second, going after corporations is popular. Doing it about inflation is popular. 60% of us believe corporations are to blame for it. The question is, what do you do, right? Blame versus change. So Harris says she's targeting price gouging. I don't really care about gouging, gauging. All right? I don't care, all right? You got to take the level of talent where you find it. We don't have great talent in our politics right now. We got to wait for better people to want to get involved in what is such a poison process. But this is who we got. So her opponents are going to say, no, this isn't gouging. This is having government control prices. What we know is this. It's not a new idea. You got about 37 states that have some form of price gouging laws, and they should. But what is price gouging? That's when you need essentials, like a storm is coming, and all of a sudden generators are like tripled in price, okay? When they had the formula shortage from the supply chain, baby formula, and all of a sudden they're charging like through the nose for it. But those are targeted and event specific, right? The broader idea of market control, that's what she's talking about. That's tough to sell and tough to do. Now, the idea that this is a radical left idea, you're definitely going to hear that, and she's definitely playing into that. But to be fair, a Republican tried the same thing, Nixon in 71. Inflation was at like 4.5%. Now, he tried to do some price fixing, right? Gas was crazy, essentials were crazy. He then had to stop. Why? Because inflation had actually ballooned, partly due to price controls. How? If you're controlling price, how do you control prices? You affect margins. You're going to affect the amount of money the corporations have to create. They are going to create less. You're going to create a shortage. And what does a shortage do? It drives up prices, creates inflation. Harris said, no, I know how to do this. To be fair, she's not talking about having done the same thing. When she was Attorney General, she did go after a form of price fixing, okay? Companies were colluding to make TVs go up in price. That's different. That's just being greedy, okay? That's right. That's what's going on there. She caught them doing that. This is different. This is market control. And the real problem here is how it's going to play with where she stopped short. The how. What is the metric? How much is too much of a price, right? What price increase would trigger the Federal Trade Commission or whatever agency oversees this from the enforcement side to go after those companies? Now, in 2020, we saw something like this. She was a co-sponsor on legislation that defined price gouging in an emergency as charging more than 10% above the previous average price. But I don't see that as an analog for this because, again, price gouging in an event-specific situation, an emergency, makes sense. This is different. Just saying that you can't make more than X as a profit reeks of anti-capitalism. And yes, it is popular to blame the corporations. But you got to be careful that what you propose as a cure does not play worse than the cold you are treating. And I call it a cold because, well, two reasons. One, because this is a reference to a problem that is real, but is getting less real. The amount of growth in prices is decreasing for like 8 months now. Now, they're still going in the wrong direction. But the question is, do you really want to lean in on something that is getting to be less of a burden for you in the campaign? That's the calculated risk here. The other risk is the optics. Price controls sound like Russia. They're calling you a communist already. That's their boogeyman from the right? You're playing right into it with that. So the Democrats are leaning into a perceived weakness. And again, this is something that's going away. So is it worth the risk? That's the question. Next, Harris spoke about another problem, okay? You can't borrow enough for a mortgage now. The lending environment is too hard in terms of their selectivity and also the rate structure, okay? The dream of a home is central to the American dream. Harris identified it and said she can fix it like this.
And by the end of my first term, we will end America's housing shortage by building 3 million new homes and rentals that are affordable for the middle class. My administration will provide first-time home buyers with $25,000 to help with the down payment on a new home.
They like it because the problem's real. There's a housing shortage because of this lending situation of about 4.7 million homes in the United States. There are a lot of people who need relief, but how? There are different ways to address it. You can incentivize the lenders. You can beware, if you do that, of the subprime mortgage problem, right? You got to be careful how much leeway you give these people, how much leverage you let them use. But that was also about deregulation. You can help allow for more and better paying jobs so people can afford these things. It's about incentivizing the private sector to provide for the change. Or you do it through government. And that's what Harris wants. $25,000 subsidy for first home buyers. How are you going to pay for that? It's not going to pay for itself. Building 3 million affordable housing units. The need is real, but what's the cost? And how do you pay for it? Now, if these issues are familiar, they should be. You're living them. If these fixes sound familiar, they should be, because Biden previously called for exactly this. Different numbers. Instead of 3 million homes, 2 million homes. Instead of 25 grand, it's 10 grand as a tax credit over 2 years for first-time home buyers. Look, there is a major policy difference and philosophical difference between what Harris is offering and traditional conservative beliefs. More government action, or, that's Harris, or less taxes to allow the private sector to address this problem. That's the conservative Republicans, and you cut government spending. Now, Trump did that with the tax cuts, but to be fair, he also spent like crazy, and the combo was devastating, creating record debt. That's why I say traditional conservatives, because Trump's administration, he's not a traditional conservative. It was a fiscal spending nightmare from a conservative perspective. Now, last is really not least, because you can't talk economy and not address taxes. And choosing between Harris and Trump on this comes down to whom you believe, because both say they want to use tax relief to target the same people. Listen.
Under my plan, more than 100 million Americans will get a tax cut, and we will do this by restoring 2 tax cuts designed to help middle class and working Americans. The Earned Income Tax Credit and the Child Tax Credit.
All right, first, let's deal with language here, okay? What is a tax credit versus a deduction or a tax cut, really? A tax cut should mean that you're getting a lower rate, okay? A deduction is what allowances you can use to reduce the amount of income that gets taxed. And then you have a tax credit, right? Which is once you have your rate and the amount of income that the government can tax, and you get to what you owe the government, the credit is a dollar for dollar decrease. So here, if you owe $6,000 in tax to the government and you have a newborn, Harris has a plan for people with newborns, which means you would owe nothing. Similarly, you restore the tax credit that the right didn't like on the earned income child tax credit of up to $3,600 per child for middle class, working class families. What if you have no kids? Well, then you're a cat lady. And Harris says Trump is right. You are less than and get nothing. No, I'm kidding. She says if you have no kids and are lower income, numbers would have to follow on what lower means, you get a $1,500 tax credit. Now, as with all tax policy, the question is, what does it cost and how do you pay for it? You're going to have ideas to make more revenue or to cut spending. The cost is real on this. It's $1.2 trillion. Some estimates go up to $1.7 over a decade. This could balloon the deficit without offsetting cuts in spending or ideas to generate revenue. So there is a difference now in style and substance. I believe you should be sick of hearing anyone tell you why the other person sucks. We've had it. It gets us nowhere good. But the plans are very different. Harris's ideas are less familiar, but what makes them ambitious is also what may make them a political liability. Now, how do we see this being reflected with better minds? Okay. They released a statement today, the Trump folk, but I'm not going to give it any air, and I'll tell you why. Because all they're doing is just calling her names instead of competing plan for plan. And again, I think you got to ignore it. So let's talk substance. Let's bring in former Assistant Secretary of the Treasury under Biden, Ben Harris, and the CEO and Chief Global Strategist of Euro-Pacific Capital, Inc., Peter Schiff. Good to see you both, fellas. Ben, I start with you. What do you make of my assessment, and why do you believe that Harris is better than Trump when it comes to restoring the economy for the people who need it?
So I think you gave a very fair assessment. You asked all the right questions. Let me answer the second question first, which is a person can't reasonably compare Harris's plans with Trump's plans because Trump has no details. So on Social Security, for example, if you go to his website and you look at his platform, he says things like, I want to protect Social Security and Medicare. I don't want to raise the retirement age, but he gives no other details. When you talk about first-time homebuyer tax credits, he says on his website, he says, look, I want to make home buying more affordable for first-time home buyers, but gives no other details. So like you said, Chris, you really can't compare apples to oranges because you don't even know what fruit you're dealing with when it comes to Trump. On the question around price gouging, I think you're asking the right question, right? So, as a capitalist, you don't want to see government dictating exactly what prices. I mean, that'd be insane if the government came out and said, you can charge $5 for Cheerios, but not $6. But my interpretation of her plan was simply what you said at the outset, which was extending the ban that most states have had in place for a long time on price gouging in the case of economic disruptions or in the case of disasters to the federal government, which is not extreme. It's not radical. Most Americans live under those type of laws right now.
It's also not what's happening. It's also not what's happening. She's saying, I'm going to help you with the price structure for fuel oil, for gas, for groceries. But we're both acknowledging that you're defining a fix that doesn't apply to the status quo.
Well, in her fact sheet, she exclusively limited price gouging to groceries, which is similar to the state plans.
Yeah, but we're not in an emergency event right now. This is just market structure. These corporations are making the money that they can make. You're saying you're going to control it. But let me bounce it over to Brother Schiff for perspective on this. Now, look, I do think it's fair. Just calling her comrade and all that wouldn't work for you when you're meeting with clients. Right, Pete? I mean, you know, you're talking to people. You're not talking about it that way. You're not saying, oh, that other guy, that banker, he's a jerk. You know, that's not what's going to get you. What do you think, from a policy perspective, gives Trump an advantage here?
Well, first of all, Harris didn't have any details either, to be fair. She just has these grandiose plans that won't work. You know, she talks about creating an economy with opportunity and competition. You get that from free market capitalism. You don't centrally plan that the way she wants to do it. But the real problem is she's going after the symptoms of inflation, not the cause. Inflation is not caused by companies raising prices. It's the inflation that causes those companies to raise prices. Now, where did we get the inflation? Well, we got the inflation because we ran massive deficits under the Biden administration, where the government spent a lot of money that it didn't collect in taxes. And so the Federal Reserve had to create that money out of thin air, and that's the inflation. Now, to be fair, we ran big deficits under Trump. We ran big deficits under Obama. So let me finish. All the inflation, all the inflation chickens are coming home to roost now. The only solution is to dramatically reduce government spending, and Harris is promising the opposite. In fact, what she's promising to do with grocery stores, she's going to put a lot of grocery stores out of business, especially in the inner cities.
Well, the margins are very thin.
Grocery
margins
stores
are very thin for grocery stores. Very small, like somewhere between 3 and 7%. Yeah.
And she even admitted that most grocery stores aren't overcharging. She just wants to go after the ones that are. Well, then why don't people just shop at the ones that aren't? People aren't idiots. But the reality is all the new regulation that she's going to have to impose on every single grocery store is going to put several of them out of business. And so now you're going to have fewer stores. You're going to have even higher prices. And what she's going to end up doing is creating shortages. And so certain food items may not even be available unless you buy them illegally on the black market, and then you're going to have a really high price because the people selling you the food could go to jail.
How can you say you don't have
that's
any
an exaggerated circumstance. Last word.
It's one or the other.
Last word, Ben. Last word, Ben.
I mean, I don't see how you can say she has no details in her plan and then make these claims like she's going to put all these grocery stores out of business. It's one or the other. Either
she didn't have any details. She didn't say how she's going to do it. She just said what she wants to do. She wants to stop people from charging high prices. How do you do that?
Peter, let's be honest. That is the central question that she has to articulate better, in my opinion.
Well, you can't articulate it. It's an asinine plan. It can't work. It'll just backfire and make the prices go up even faster. Same thing with their housing plan.
But, Peter, that's the political challenge, right? Just like it was for Nixon back in the 70s when he tried it.
Well, Nixon did a lot of mistakes, too. We got to cut
but I'm saying it's not like this is the domain of Democrats. Yeah, but hold on, Peter. If that's true, then you can't be a Trump fan because no Republican spent more than that cat did. That guy spent so much that he had conservatives crying in Congress.
Yes, I criticized Trump while he was doing it. I was against all the COVID spending. It was all a mistake. And I was against the spending before COVID. But Biden is even worse. And it's a choice between the lesser of two evils. Neither one of these candidates would be my ideal. It's a question of who's going to be worse. Not, I'm not satisfied with either one.
Hey,
but hopefully Donald Trump.
Peter, did you take any COVID money? Did you take any PPE?
I didn't know.
Did you take any?
A lot of people did. It was a big boondoggle. I didn't take a nickel.
You didn't take a nickel? Don't make me chase after you, Peter. No, I didn't take any. I got no PPP money. I got no stimulus. I got nothing. But a lot of people did. It was a big fraud. It was one of the biggest boondoggles in American history. And everybody voted for it. The Democrats voted for it. I'm with you. Look, there was need, but it got accepted. Of course they did.
It's why
everybody likes to play when it's not their money. Absolutely right. Peter, they're both to blame. Let's see who's got a better fix. I got to jump. Ben Harris, I appreciate it. Peter Schiff, I appreciate it. 4 minutes, 5 seconds. Coming up. I'm going to Chicago for the Democratic National Convention. I'm not going to be there on Monday because my godfather passed, as you know, and I got to be there for the funeral. That's Tuesday. Now, This is going to be Harris. The reason she's not doing interviews, the reason they're keeping some of this bottled up is because they want the convention to be the crescendo for them that launches the momentum going forward. But let's talk about how they're going to make this moment. Where are Biden, Obama, the Clintons? Where is Michelle Obama? I don't even know that she's getting a slot. What's the thought? How are they going to use the big celebrities? Is Taylor Swift worth the radioactivity? How is it going to be different than what we saw at the RNC? Got all of that. And then let's not forget this other component. This is not 1968. We don't have a divisive war going on, but we got a lot of division. Are we going to see a repeat of the DNC from 1968 with the riots that were outside in Chicago? God forbid. But let's talk about how they're preventing it. All right, the DNC kicks off on Monday, but I got questions, man. I'm going, right? NewsNation's going to be there. We're going to cover it all week, of course. Not going there to party down with people, okay, and glad hand and hand out swag. We're going there to see who is set up best to do the most for you. The DNC hasn't unveiled an official program, but I've been listening around, and all the big shots are going to be there. You got President Biden scheduled to speak. Now there's drama that we'll discuss with our guests that he may not be there when Obama speaks because he's upset at Obama for not sticking up for him. And, of course, you're going to have Harris. Of course, you're going to have Clintons. Where, when? No Michelle Obama, as far as I know. What is that about? And what is important for the DNC to do that the RNC didn't do? How do they counter Kid Rock, Dana White, Hulk Hogan? All right? You know, those guys are like, you know, the Macho Brigade. What's the counter? Okay? And how are they going to affect that? And then we have the security issue, which we'll do after with different guests. Let's bring in former Obama campaign advisor, Amisha Cross, who will be with me at the DNC next week. So we'll get the benefit of her contacts and tea. And a former top communications aide to the Trump 2020 campaign, Erin Perini. Erin, first question. How is it Perini when it ends in an E? What kind of name is it?
It's French.
And it's Perini. Yeah. That way.
Yeah.
I thought you were one of mine and hiding. I thought you were one of me and hiding in phonetics. All right, Erin, it's good to have you both. So, no, not at all. It's great to have you. Amisha, where's Michelle Obama?
Michelle Obama is obviously going to make an appearance. She's not listed on this mainstay conversation, honestly, because she has never held political office. I think one of the things that we're looking at here is individuals who have been known and shown to bring votes. And they're trying to bolster not only the Obama coalition, but also the coalitions that Democrats have enjoyed for quite some time at this point, in addition to this new invigorated ticket. So I do believe we're going to see a lot of Michelle Obama. She's currently not listed on this scheduled speakers list because they're focusing on those who have held elected office before. But I definitely think that she's going to be a very big part of this. And it would be crazy not to. Chicago is actually her hometown.
Yeah. Or is she mitigated, not because she's not an elected, but because she stands in stark contrast to Kamala Harris as a second choice if you wanted your first black female president?
I think the only people who are prognosticating about the chances that or the idea that we would see a Michelle Obama candidacy are Republicans. Democrats have known for a long time that she doesn't want to run. She's been saying it for years. She's made jokes about it. Her kids don't even want to run. They want to stay as far away from public office as possible. They want to do the work on the campaign trail for those who are running and to invigorate the Democratic ticket, get people excited about this process. But running is not in her future, and she's made that painstakingly clear. She's going to do what's necessary to get those votes out, but there is no indication that she will ever consider running for public office.
I just mean in terms of the optics. But, Erin, let me come to you on this. Obama and Bill Clinton, I won't include Hillary Clinton in the analysis, I think that charisma star power beats Dana White, Hulk Hogan, and Kid Rock, even though they're not celebrities. But what is your concern as a Republican about what you don't want to see the Democrats pull off in this convention?
One of the biggest things that Republicans are going to be watching for to see if Kamala can or cannot pull it off is really this kind of biographical phase. How much more are they going to be able to make her likable when right now she's really on the rise very highly in polling? What you're going to see in this Democrat convention, just based on the little bit of information that's out right now, because it is under such lock and key, is It's going to be celebrate Joe Biden night on Monday, and then you're not going to see him the rest of this. And it is going to pivot very heavily to laying out the groundwork about who Kamala is and why she becomes the next generation of Democrats. The bigger question here is, who are they bringing on during the day to do daytime speeches? The RNC, they used it for family members of fallen soldiers. They used it for the 13 members who were killed in Afghanistan, service members killed in Afghanistan. They used it for families who lost people to drug overdoses and school teachers. What's that message? And is it going to drive Kamala further to the left or more toward the middle? Because the policy proposals we've seen in the last day and a half are certainly bringing her further to the left than the moderate that she is being played up as a lot in the media.
So I believe they've made it kind of easy for you, Amisha, in terms of playing this commie card. I think people are sick of the name calling. I really do. I think it's, the byproduct of so much media now is that you do get oversaturation. So what do you believe the Democrats need to counter with in terms of who they're laying out as constituency and what they're laying out as message?
Well, I think they're doing that. And what Kamala Harris outlined today in terms of her policy priorities, a lot of that was driven by where America happens to be right now. We know that the overwhelming majority of folks who want to purchase a home cannot. We know what that market looks like for individuals, in addition to grocery bills and what it looks like to, not be able to afford to buy the back to school items that you need and pay your electric bill at the same time. And it's been a summer that's been really hot, so that those utility bills are extremely high for many people. However, I think that for Kamala Harris, it is that biographical story because she does have to introduce herself to voters. In addition to that, it is leaning in on this demographic that I think is going to really matter in this electoral cycle, the 54% of American voters that are women. And those women are heavily turned off by not only Donald Trump, but moreover, J.D. Vance and some of the overtures that he's made. Not only the cat ladies, but the postmenopausal women. His, push against women, the war on women starts with J.D. Vance. I think that he's created that wedge and she's going to run right through it. In addition to that, she is, again, bringing the band back together. That Barack Obama coalition wasn't necessarily there for a Joe Biden reelect. They are there for Kamala Harris, and they're there for the taking. And we've seen it time and time again. There's even evangelicals for Harris. A few years ago, hell, even last year, you wouldn't have imagined evangelicals jumping on the bandwagon for Democrats in general. But we're seeing a pathway for Kamala Harris that is one that we have not seen in the past. And I don't think that's going to go away anytime too soon.
Amisha Cross, thank you. Aaron Perini, thank you. I give you last word because it's your convention. Perini, it's good having you on your show. Thank you for explaining the name and making good policy points, and I'll have you on again. Thank you both very much. Now, I'm cutting from this to something else because I care about the security profile also, right? The politics of what the politics are going to be, we'll take that day by day. But thousands of pro-Palestinian protesters. Now, I don't even know that that's a fair description. Some is pro-Palestinian, okay? Some are, there's just too much violence there. Some are sympathetic to a terror organization known as Hamas. And they're coming into the DNC. Look, it ain't 68. This isn't anti-Vietnam and all the racial cataclysm that we had. But we do have division. You got a sitting president and two former presidents inside. It's a big target. So how do you keep it safe? And are they doing that? Let's bring in former Secret Service agent Paul Eckloff and former FBI agent and NewsNation law and justice contributor Jennifer Coffindaffer. Coffindaffer, you've done this kind of planning. First of all, is it possible, and how scaled do you think this threat is?
Well, I think the scale is large. I think this is one of the biggest threats in terms of possibilities of all things going wrong that there's been in decades. So I think it's really important that they push back that perimeter. We've seen that the permits aren't being allowed, and they're going to have to really have a large-scale push in manpower and also the intelligence piece of it, gathering what kind of very specific threats exist so that they can block them.
Paul, let me get you in here quickly as well. Look, we had our God forbid already with Trump. What do you have to do with so much high-value targets inside this convention?
With so many high-value targets, you really have to lean on the fact that this is a national special security event. In fact, it's the 79th that the Secret Service has protected since 1998. And with that comes an embedded presence of other federal agencies that would normally be brought in after the fact. NSSE's enabled the Secret Service to develop a security plan, the FBI to be on site for investigations, domestic intelligence, and other investigations in case of a threat, and even FEMA in case of natural disaster, terrorist attacks, or just domestic violence. You have a robust security plan in place, and that has been planning for over a year.
Paul, I appreciate it. Paul Eckloff, Jennifer Coffin-Dafford, thank you very much. As we learn more about the threat and also what's being done about it, we will re-adjourn. Thank you very much. Let's now go to break. 4 minutes, 30 seconds. Up next, I want to dig a little more into this Friends star Matthew Perry. And what is the line? 5 people have been charged. Okay, this is criminal. This isn't civil. This isn't Perry's family coming after them. When do you have criminal responsibility for the death of someone else who overdoses? And how do you show that? 2 of them are doctors. Another one was his personal assistant. They were supposed to help him. Where is the duty of care? I know that's a civil term, but let's dig into it. We got TMZ founder Harvey Levin has exclusive new information on what was found in Perry's home and what other celebrities could have been involved, plus an addiction specialist with that understanding of who is responsible and when. Next. Died from acute effects of a ketamine overdose last October. Now, 5 people have been charged in Perry's death, 2 doctors and his personal assistant. So let's take a look at it here, okay? The assistant, I kind of get. The day Perry died, the assistant gave him 3 injections. Perry told him to shoot me up with a big one before getting into his jacuzzi. But the doctors, now one of them would often inject Perry himself, once allegedly inside a parking lot. Text messages were noted because they are disgusting in this way, but are they criminal? I wonder how much this moron will pay. Let's find out, because they were allegedly overcharging Perry. If today goes well, we're going to have repeat business. And after one of the doctors met with Perry, he texted, it was like a bad movie. So when does a do no harm doctor rule become a criminal matter? Let's bring in Harvey Levin, founder of TMZ, and addiction expert, chief patient officer for the wellness company, Dr. Drew Pinsky. Good to see you both. First, Harvey, what do you got?
Well, look, I mean, you ask the question, when is it illegal? It's illegal when you are getting the drugs illegally from the ketamine queen and have them funneled over to somebody you know is an addict, you know is at risk, and you treat them so callously that you put them in a position like Matthew Perry was, where he could die. So this was not a doctor prescribing in his office. This was essentially a bunch, at least allegedly, a bunch of drug dealers who were pushing drugs to Matthew Perry in return for a lot of money. That's where it becomes criminal.
What inside do you understand that you want the audience to know?
So we found out that in April, this ketamine queen actually was charged with a separate crime of illegally possessing and selling drugs. And they found, Chris, they found 2,000 meth pills. They found equipment where she was boiling ketamine to make it saleable. They found ecstasy. They found coke. They found all sorts of drugs. And I think what's really important here, and I think Dr. Drew will co-sign on this, is that this is not just about Matthew Perry. There is a network of doctors and others who are funneling drugs to people with means. And the really shocking part is that a lot of these people meet in rehab. That Matthew Perry met the ketamine queen in a rehab facility along with Charlie Sheen's ex-wife, who also happened to be best friends with the guy who was the broker for the drug. She has not been charged or arrested, but she cooperated with authorities and actually led them to her then best friend, among others. So the fact that they all met in rehab, when you think about it, is really shocking.
Special circle of hell for people who take advantage of people while trying to get treated for mental illness and addiction. Doc, I hear where Harvey's coming from, but we almost never hear of drug dealers being charged with homicide unless they're pushing bad product, right? Then sometimes if they knew this was bad product and they did it anyway, sometimes, but it's pretty rare. What do you think should happen here and why?
This is essentially identical to the Michael Jackson situation. The fact that Michael Jackson was given propofol outside of a surgical suite or an intensive care unit was the most bizarre thing I'd ever heard. I had a similar reaction to what was going on with this ketamine that was being distributed to poor Matthew Carey. Even though, however, I don't believe the ketamine was the proximate cause of his death. I think it contributed, but it was the opiates and the benzodiazepines that were seen in his toxicology report. That is always what causes people to stop breathing, decreases their respiratory drive, so when they go underwater, they don't wake up, they don't sputter. And the ketamine, of course, contributed. That doesn't make this, and somebody may use this as a defense in court, which is awful, because it doesn't make it any less outrageous that he was given these extraordinary amounts of a clearly dangerous drug, anesthetic levels of this drug.
All right, so we're going to get to the central question here, Harvey, or Drew, both of you weigh in on this. If you look at this prosecution, they are going to have to show that the doctors, the assistant, that they were part of what killed Perry on that day in that tub. The assistant has a problem, okay? The assistant has a problem, Harvey. I don't know how the doctors do if you can't put them in the room giving him something that kills him.
Well, look, I think Drew is right that he didn't die specifically from ketamine. But the reality is, and Drew, I'm a juris doctor, not a medical doctor, so help me out here. But the ketamine, there was enough in his system to basically for a doctor to do general anesthesia in surgery. So what he ended up was just unconscious as a result, and then right. just fell underneath the water and died. So there is, I think, there's a
something had to suppress his. Yeah, it's a proximate contributor for sure. But listen, the anesthetic levels, one of the reasons we use ketamine as an anesthetic is it doesn't interfere with respiration. But if you add things that do to it, that is why you stop breathing. Who added them? And again, to be getting this medication out of a controlled environment, yeah, absolutely. Then getting this medicine outside of a controlled environment, it is at least negligent manslaughter, at least. I don't know if that's what they're going for. If they're going, I don't think it actually is a murder one, that they had some this was a customer. They didn't want him to die, but it's
Conrad
negligent
Murray was involuntary manslaughter. Conrad Murray was involuntary manslaughter.
Hey, Chris, can I make kind of a broader point?
Yeah, Harvey, I'm going to give you the last point. Go ahead.
You're right that Conrad Murray was involuntary manslaughter. I have a different take on that. Conrad Murray was the stooge who was the last straw in Michael Jackson's life. And this is kind of what I was getting at the beginning, that there is a network of doctors and others who are doing this to a lot of people. And in Michael Jackson's case, he was getting shot up with Demerol every single day. His body was not only weakened, it was destroyed. And the addiction was not on Conrad Murray, it was on a bunch of other doctors that gave Michael Jackson 19 aliases. My point being that this is a serious problem that tragically happened to Matthew Perry, but goes way beyond him.
Rich people
100%.
And famous people can get access to things that they shouldn't because people want to do business with them and they want to get paid. We'll see what happens. Let's stay on it. Dr. Drew, thank you. Harvey, appreciate you.
Thank you, guys.
To be continued. 3 minutes and 45 seconds. You got a question? 844-968-7720. Let's get after it. I answer one now. That song that I played in a piece with my godfather is by my daughter, and she's got to make a decision about when she wants to release it. So then that's how you get it. I appreciate it, but it's not mine to tell you to get. You know what I mean? So she's got to make that decision. Dusty, who do you got?
She has a beautiful, beautiful voice, I must say.
I mean, look, she's working on it. She wants to release music. I'll let you know when she does, but I can't just give it away now. Go ahead.
James from South Carolina.
Yeah.
James, what do you got?
Yeah, hi, Chris. As a right-leaning independent, I've twice voted for Trump, but I'm considering voting for Harris, although I'm not tickled about her being far left. Should I legitimately be concerned about preserving democracy if I vote for Trump, which is my biggest concern?
A lot of people will tell you yes. I don't believe that Trump has the ambition or the capabilities to be a democracy destroyer. I think the guy wants to win because he lost. His policy plans are all familiar territory. It's not like he's thinking up new ideas. But a lot of people will say, what are you talking about? Look at Project 2025. Look at the people who were involved. Look how he lied about having known about it. This is what's going to happen. Look how he tried to rig it the last time. Look at January 6th. Look, I think it's exaggerated. I think it's hyperbolic. That's where we are in our politics. She's not a radical lefty. And, you know, he is not, you know, Fidel Castro, you know, but look, this is where we are. It's a battle to the bottom. Next.
Next, where did she go? There she is, Marjorie from Fort Lauderdale.
Marjorie, what's your question?
Okay, I want to know the real reason why you're still on TV and not in the White House. You need to help us. You're so smart. You have all the right answers. And I want to see you helping us. What is the real reason you're not running?
This is how I can help, although I like that you're asking me a probing question, like I'm going to come out and tell you the deep, dark reason that I'm not in politics. I'm not in politics because you grow up in it the way I have. You've seen it the way I have. Man, the compromise is just not worth it to me. I believe I can help this way. This is how I'm doing it. And I'll tell you something else, Marjorie. We deserve better than me. There are amazing leaders in this country. People who are incredibly capable, who can make deals, who have that elixir of logic and language and that ability to kind of get people to do things. That ain't me, okay? I'm here to test that man or woman. That's what I want to do for you. But thank you very much. And Mom, if this is actually you, stop hiding your voice and use your real name next time. Do we have time for another one or no? We don't.
No, we don't actually. I don't want to risk it. You know, we have Dan next. But I was about to say I'm going to tell.
Don't ruin the brand.
We're brand ruiners. I would look. I have the brand. I have the whole thing. I was going to say I was going to tell your mom to stop calling in under an alias. But I will tell you this: we were in a restaurant together over the weekend, and there were several tables that came up and asked me why you didn't run for president. I said, seriously? You can't be serious.
They were asking me, what are you doing here with her? I said, she's paying.
They thought I was your they thought I was your COVID doctor. That was even worse.
You know what I love? People have such a low bar for believability that people see Dusty and me together all the time. Okay, we have been friends a long time. We walk together, we hang out together. They're always surprised that we actually are friendly with each other. Anyway, Dusty, I love you. Everybody, thank you for being with us tonight. I'll see you next week. Dan Abrams, after a quick break.